This is a weird fucking time. Hi everyone. I know that this is a really strange time for everyone with the whole coronavirus, self-isolation going on, a worldwide pandemic happening literally as I speak. I hope you're staying as safe as you can and as calm as you can and are being nice and trying your best to focus on the positives. So I thought I would sit here and talk about some books for a bit because why not? So last month on Instagram I talked a bit about some of the best books I read last year in 2019, and a bunch of people started asking me for recommendations. Got me thinking about books that I think are good enough to just recommend to anyone. I'm just gonna say this is not gonna be a list of classics. If you want a list of classics to read, Google it, you'll find fucking loads. But I do think that while these books aren't exactly classics, they're definitely all popular enough, or I would say universally well liked or well known, but not necessarily the first thing that you would get recommended. These are books that I think anyone could be interested in or read and then have opinions on. Obviously everyone's tastes are different. I'm not saying that these are books that guaranteed everyone will like, and that's fine. But if I was asked to make a list of books for anyone, this would be it. Book number 1, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. When Miss Tartt said beauty is terror, we felt that. I read The Secret History when I was about 16 or 17. I remember this was the first adult book that I read and absolutely loved. I think it was actually only the second adult book I'd ever read. I think just before this I had read Anna Karenina over about 6 months. And I mean, if you really want something to keep you occupied in this self-quarantine, sure, you could go ahead and pick up 800 pages of classic Russian literature, but it is a lot. So instead, I'm going to recommend you about 700 pages of genius, really. This book, our main character, Richard Papin, takes us back to his days in university in Vermont, which for a really long time I thought was the place in Canada, but I do actually think it is part of America. Whack. Richard finds himself in a very interesting friend group with a somewhat exclusive group of students on campus. There's the leader Henry, Francis, twins Charles and Camilla, and Bunny, whose real name I can't honestly remember, everyone just calls him Bunny, and their lessons with their classics teacher, who is very particular about the students he takes on. He is notorious for only taking on a handful of students at a time. No one thinks that Richard will even be able to get into his class or this friend group, but he is determined, and that is essentially what this book is about. So this book is dark, to say the least. This is like what all the dark academia aesthetics online are based off. This isn't the first dark academia novel, but it is definitely the most popular. It looks at the evils of humanity and I guess the corruption of the mind when someone becomes obsessed with something. It's very mysterious, a little bit speculative, maybe you might say. I would say a little bit. It goes there. And while this isn't the shortest book, I would say it is definitely worth the time. Next, I'm going to recommend The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I think this actually is a classic, technically. I've lied to you all, I'm so sorry, but this has to be put on here. This book is about a shepherd named Santiago, and Santiago goes on a journey to try and find this lost buried treasure, which is meant to be around the pyramids of Egypt. This book is so rich in themes and messages to do with dreams and journeys, like personal journeys, personal growth, humanity in general. It is a super short read, very, very short, probably the shortest book I'm going to be recommending in this list. It's very soulful, it's very philosophical. Some critics say that the writing is too whimsical, but it is fiction and it's beautiful, but feel free to make your own opinion. I think everyone could read this book and take something different away from it. It really does just depend on how you read it and what speaks most to you. but for me it was uplifting and heartwarming, and again, it really is just so beautiful and so simple. Another book that I would recommend to anyone is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Murakami is super famous, and so is Norwegian Wood, even though, interestingly enough, that is not the book that he ever wanted to become famous for. I don't think he even really wanted to be famous at all, but he is an author that I would recommend to everyone, and seen as Norwegian Wood is his most popular work, it is, I would say, the most accessible. This book is honestly a bit depressing. It is essentially a romance. It is about a college student named Toru. He is very much in love with his friend Naoko. They have been friends since they were children. However, their relationship is difficult, I guess you could say, as they had another friend as kids who has died. This book is heavily focused on mental illness, growing with depression, growing from pain, growing from losing someone, having to learn how to change, not only because of losing someone, in general, learning how to grow as a person, as an adult. I definitely wouldn't go picking up this book lightly. This book does deal with suicide, but it is such an impactful book, and I think if you're going to read any Murakami book, I think it should be this one. Maybe I'm more drawn to sad books than I thought. Oh, the next book is kind of sad too. So my next suggestion is going to be Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This is a young adult novel which I think is highly underrated. This is far better than any John Green bullshit that you are going to pick up and read. This book follows Frances in her last year of high school and her transition into college. Frances is very studious, she's very study focused, doesn't really have a big social life or many interests outside of school, but she makes a super precious friendship with a lead. After that, everything changes. This book again deals with mental illnesses and relationships and strong themes of identity and diversity. I am also going to say that there is parental abuse, not to do with Frances and her family, but with one of the other main characters in the story, so just be aware of that. It is achingly real. This book is so incredible. I fully cried throughout reading this, but again, it's a beautiful book, super impactful, super worth it. And just because it deals with these super serious, super heavy topics, I think it doesn't mean that it is a depressing book overall. I think overall it is more uplifting and optimistic than negative and depressing. I just definitely think out of all the YA books that I could recommend, this one is the best. So to anyone who knows they can handle heavier topics, I would definitely recommend this to you. Whew, okay, now, moving on, I wanted to put some nonfiction on this list. I sometimes forget that people want to read to gain actual useful knowledge. So I actually have two suggestions for this. I'm going to suggest Quiet by Susan Cain and Atomic Habits by James Clear. I haven't actually read all of Quiet, but I have read all of Atomic Habits. So Quiet's full title is Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Won't Stop Talking. Maybe I'm biased because I'm an introvert myself, but this book is so much more than just finding out what your Myers-Briggs type is. This book looks into society and how we function socially as humans. Also how this affects other areas of our lives and our society as well. I know lots of introverted people have said that this book has changed their lives, and from what I read of it, I could see how it could, but I don't think this is a book that is limited for introverts. There is also a lot about extroverts and ambiverts, but I just think in general, if you're interested in people, in psychology, society, or social sciences, this would be a really interesting read. Now, if you consider yourself a more practical person, or you want to be able to take action after reading a book, Atomic Habits. It's kind of self-explanatory. This book is about habits, how to make them, how to break them, why they're important, why we should care about them, how they shape our lives, how they can change our lives, how they work together with our personal systems and goals, and how we can get the most out of them. This is a super practical book, so you will finish this with lots of things that you can put into practice once you're done. I did only give this a 3-star rating because I felt that I had already learnt a lot of this from reading The Bullet Journal Method by Ryder Carroll, but bullet journaling is a very specific interest. I would definitely recommend it if you're really interested in productivity or learning how to make the most of your time, but Atomic Habits is a book that anyone could pick up and get something out of, and I think in general it is a pretty good introduction to self-help books. So those are my two nonfiction recs for anyone who doesn't want to really read fiction. But moving back to fiction, I have 2 more books that I'm going to recommend. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I only read this book this year, but this is just a book that anyone can enjoy. This is a story about Evelyn Hugo. She's a retired actress, celebrity figure. She's been pretty quiet about her life and she's now suddenly giving an interview. But it's interesting because Evelyn chooses a very specific person to do this interview, and Monique, the interviewer chosen, is super confused, also super honored to have been given this opportunity, so she doesn't question it that much. And you wouldn't either if one of the most famous people alive asked you to come to their house and take their final interview. So this book follows two timelines. There is the present timeline where Monique is interviewing Evelyn, and then there's also the timeline of Evelyn's whole life in Hollywood told through the interviews. Taylor Jenkins Reid is really good at writing interview format books, and she's just really great at writing fame. Not just famous people, but fame. She makes it so luxurious and rich and glamorous, but also dark and gritty, the horrible real side of fame that no one would really talk about, which honestly just makes it more luxurious, but she does a great job. This book is all about love and identity and scandal and heartbreak. As you can probably tell by the title, Evelyn has had 7 husbands. Really the main question of the book that everyone wants to know is who was Evelyn's one true love. And trust me, you just want to read it just to find out who her one true love is. It's entertaining, it's emotional, it's worth reading. Read it. And this last book, maybe I am. Yeah, Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. No. Before you click out of this video, before you totally disregard all of my recommendations, hear me out, okay? Chances are you've heard of Twilight. Either you've watched the movies, or you've heard about the books, or you've seen the memes. These books have been out for years. Plenty of time to have come across them. This is a serious recommendation. Okay, I am not proposing that you go and read Twilight to dissect it and come out with this genius opinion that this book is garbage and that only stupid teenage girls would be interested in this. We've been there, we've done that. We don't need to revisit it. If anything, I would propose for you to read this and try analyze why and how it became so popular, because it obviously did something right. I have actually studied Twilight for a group project last year in my science fiction and fantasy class. We looked at vampires in romance, like the evolution of paranormal romance, and it was super interesting. And I think at this time, I'm not gonna sit here and recommend to you a serious, scary ass paranormal. No. We are here for the escapism, people. So I am going to suggest that you read about a 100-year-old sparkling vampire virgin who pines after a 17-year-old human girl. That really does sound disgusting, but it does pretty much sum up the plot. Not all reading needs to be serious for it to be good, in my opinion. Lots of people will shit on Twilight because it's romance, and on top of that it's a paranormal romance. Fantasy and all of its subgenres are always snubbed and not deemed good enough because, I don't know, they're not realistic, but at the end of the day, it's all fucking fiction. And, well, except for the 2 non-fiction books that I recommended. But if you're looking for something easy, entertaining, Twilight. Read this hot garbage and give yourself a goddamn break. So, after a lot of consideration, those are my 7? Is it 7? How many? Yeah, 7 recommendations that I would give to anyone. If you're new to reading or you're just looking for something different to pick up, I hope that this helped in any way. I'm not just promoting reading because of the self-quarantine, but I think it is a particularly good time to talk about it, or a good time to all come together and discuss. I would love to hear any recommendations from you guys, or know what your go-to book recommendations are to people if you don't know them too well or you're not sure what they're really into. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it very much, and I will see you guys in another video.